numbers mixed up, boys.
Make a wish, Glenn. Be back next time with more of the same. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Beat the Sports Score at 2:45. See you later.
That was too good for you.
Go on, Robbie. Oh.
Hey. You right, man? Oh, yeah. Great to see you. Great to see you.
I'm good.
You are look well, man.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I had a shave, especially for you.
I did it for you. Yeah, mate, sit there.
Oh, dear.
Mate, you're looking superb.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's been 3 and a bit months, so, you know, it's been tough.
Okay, stand by.
Yeah.
God, that was a good one. Can I get that job?
I always admire him as a player, watching him grow up as a player. 2 months before the incident happened, we were out in Portugal. Me, Glenn, a couple of other friends, 4 days to play golf.
First and foremost, I'm a football fan. And Glenn Hoddle was obviously one of the greatest players this country's ever produced.
So, your birthday, October the 27th, you wake up in the morning looking forward to today on Sat Sav.
On Sat Sav?
Oh, where are you looking forward to it?
Yeah. I was thinking, what am I doing going on that show on my birthday? Yes, I mean, what's the chances of what happened? You know, it was a normal day. I felt fine. I just travelled into the studios and...
Your driver, Jono, takes you everywhere.
Jono takes me everywhere, yeah. I remember saying, cheerio, I'll see you at 5:30. Shut the door. The rest is a little bit of a blur, you know.
So after I do this bit, go to Scotland, guys chat, and then I don't come back on until we kick off. So all I'll need.
It was just like a normal day. It really, really was. It was like any day that you walk into BT.
I think I was one of the first to arrive, and then Glenn was second or third. I think Incy might have come in, and then Glenn was in. When Glenn's involved or in your company, it's just always football. And we were just chatting football in the green room, getting ready for the show.
Stevie, can you hear me?
Got a minute, pal.
We have a chat. We say, you're going to be taking me on a tech ball. You know, because I wanted to play against a legend, because I thought I'd never, ever be a legend. You know, all the lads are having a bit of fun. We're talking about your birthday, what you're doing in the evening. Yeah. And then we go on to the show. Good morning and welcome to another packed edition of Saturday Morning Savage, all in the company of Glenn Hoddle, Steve Sitwell, Paul Ince and Harry Redknapp.
I can't remember any of that at all.
When we started the show, you know, and, you know, I was sitting next to the gaffer and he was on my left-hand side and he kept, like, rubbing his hands, you know, and saying, oh, it's cold, cold. I said, gaffer, it's always cold in here. That's what it's like.
So what do you remember then?
I remember you and Incy walking towards with a cake, with a birthday cake.
Happy birthday. There you go.
Oh, happy birthday.
I remember that. And I remember the other one. The other thing I remember is the lizard.
Oh, no! It's not that! What is that?
The reason the lizard came on, I presume, was because Harry was going in. But the lizard I remember, and it was only afterwards when I was talking to people, that they must have been thinking I was on the medication or I was going mad. Because why would you know, he's thinking of a lizard going on this show.
Seriously, what's happening here? No, see, I don't it's horrible. Oh. There was a snake.
Snake?
Yeah, there was a big snake. Incy doing an eating challenge.
Oh, what?
Eating challenge.
I was good at that, isn't he?
Yeah.
Shut it!
We're all laughing and joking.
Yeah.
And then as the show come towards the end, I took on a fan at tech ball. Then, right, Glenn, you're up. Do you remember anything about
I
tech
can't
ball?
remember the tech ball at all.
We've not got a load of time, but you can start things off.
Don't be the gaffer. You've got too clever. Too clever.
So me and you played.
You didn't beat me, did you?
Can I tell you?
Did you?
I was 2-1 up.
No.
I was 2-1 up. Then the cameras, the show finished. This is where,
Yeah.
you know, it gets bizarre, really. So, right, thanks, Rap. So everybody said, right, Glenn, you know, what do you want to do? Go for your lunch, go to your dressing room? You said, no, let's finish the game, Sav.
Did we?
So we finished the game 2-1, first to 3. So the very next point, as we go off air, we're playing, and then I serve, you hit it back to me, and then I hit it to you.
Sav hit the ball and it went to the left-hand side and he's moved and I think he's kind of chested it and then gone to kick it. And as the ball's dropped down to his foot, and as he's gone to kick it, I'm watching him and I see him stumble.
You just went back, and I thought for a minute, you know, because I'm beating you, you're taking a mick.
Yeah.
And you just fell back with no control, like a starfish, and your head smashed against the concrete floor, and you'd gone.
I think the one thing that I really remember from that day is the noise of his head hitting the ground. I just remember running over, and I remember just saying, he's out, he's out.
I think as when I kind of think back to it, I think I was more concerned about him banging his head. I didn't realise he'd had a heart attack because, you know, there was no signs.
First and foremost, I thought you swallowed your tongue because you were, you know, you weren't doing anything. Your eyes had gone to the back of your head. So I've grabbed your head and, you know, I've panicked.
The colour of his face just went to a colour that I've never seen before.
I've shouted, help, help, help. And then that's when Incy, Steve Sidwell and over, and Simon.
Right. Yeah, Simon Daniels.
So my role on Saturday Savage and The Score is the second sound person in the control room. I look after all the music, all the sound effects, any quizzes or any games. My responsibility is to add all that element into the microphones, the videotapes, everything else that we do on the programme. In my spare time, I am a special constable with Thames Valley Police. I'm actually a sergeant now, so I help mentor new officers as they come through. Part of our training every year, we have to do first aid course every single year just to make sure that we're refreshed on the latest techniques. And obviously that training that I had in first aid and of course CPR is what I used on the day to help save Glenn. I'd got onto the studio floor and I think I'd walked around behind one of the large screens that's in the studio, and I heard a bit of a commotion, and then I heard someone shout for help. And as I looked across the studio floor, I could see someone lying on the floor, and I assumed at that point that someone had perhaps fainted, and I certainly didn't know it was Glenn. But my natural instinct was just to rush over and help. And of course, as soon as I got to the person on the floor, I realised it was Glenn. And I realised very quickly that he was seriously unwell.
He realised it was a very serious issue.
Yeah.
And then obviously he put you on your side, he released your tongue.
I undertook the standard checks that we do with all people who are having any kind of medical episode. ABC, airway, breathing, circulation. And I felt his pulse, and at that point it was either very weak or virtually non-existent. I could then tell very quickly that he'd stopped breathing, and it was at that point that I knew that I had to start doing CPR and start giving rescue breaths to give him a chance of survival. I asked people to, you know, phone for an ambulance, go and get the defibrillator, because the building, you know, has got a defibrillator. And those were the first key things. Get those things coming, get the ambulance coming, get the defibrillator coming. And I then immediately started CPR.
Ripping the shirt open, I remember buttons flying off, and then him just doing CPR and just going into a zone that I've never sort of seen someone sort of take control really of a situation.
I think you just switch into that mode, didn't you? If you know what to do, that could have been anybody. Someone would have done exactly the same for you or anybody else.
You know, I just thank God that I was in the studios at that time with Simon there, with a defibrillator there. You know, I could have gone and taken a phone call and been on my own for that 30 seconds or whatever, and I wouldn't be sitting here today. That could have happened at any time during that day. And what a time to do it on your birthday as well. It's, you know, some present I've given myself. Yeah, and it's more traumatic probably for you and the guys that were on the show than it was for me, because I was out of it.
You know, he's a very fit man. He obviously keeps himself in trim, and actually doing CPR on someone who is that fit, it's quite hard work, because to be able to get the blood to flow, you've got to compress the chest. And, you know, when you do CPR, there is obviously the potential to crack, you know, a couple of ribs. And I felt the ribs crack quite early on.
You know, when you hear people say he's fighting for his life.
Yeah.
So Simon kept saying to all of us, keep saying to him, keep encouraging him, keep saying, come on, gaffing, into his point of view. You know, I had your head saying, come on, Glenn, keep fighting.
Come on, Glenn, keep going, stay with us.
Come on, Gaffer. Remember World Cup, you know, getting through the World Cup, remember how tough it was? You know, this is the battle, you know, you're battling now.
And every time the lads were doing that, your eyes would flicker.
Really?
You were responding. So even though you were out, you were responding in some way, which was...
That just shows you somewhere, your subconscious or something still hears and still fights.
And Harry was shouting, come on, Glenn. And, you know, Harry was in bits. We all were, you know, in tears.
I was very aware that there was an awful lot of people around me, you know, footballers, technical crew, all who are witnessing one of the greatest footballers suffering a cardiac arrest. And I was focusing on Glenn, and I wasn't thinking about it then, but probably afterwards, is that, you know, I had to do the best I could do, and I was just determined just to keep going until the paramedics turned up.
I remember Simon pumping his heart, 1, 2, 3. I remember someone else coming in to say, let me have a go, and he said, no, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
The function of CPR is to get the heart going. A defibrillator puts the heart back into the correct rhythm, so you've got to get the heart going. So I'm doing the CPR, and I shouted for the defibrillator, and that came into the studio. We placed the pads on Glenn's chest, and then the machine actually tells you to stop doing CPR so that the machine can analyse the heart rhythm, if there's a heart rhythm there. And it advised giving Glenn a shock. So I shouted to everybody to stand clear.
The hardest part for me was when the defib went on, that you've got to sit back and let it do its business, which is kind of hard when you're watching someone possibly dying in front of you, that you've just got to wait for this machine to evaluate it, and then you can't touch him.
And I pressed the button, and it gave Glenn the shock, and then the machine told me to continue doing CPR. I think the first paramedics were there within about 7 minutes, which is very quick. And I remember doing CPR for 8.5 minutes, because the key thing is when the paramedics first turn up, don't just stop. They need time to connect up all their equipment. And I knew from my training that I had to keep going until they told me to stop. And it was only then that I kind of then stepped back and let the paramedics and doctors, you know, work on Glenn.
When they turn up, they want to know, obviously, how long someone's been performing CPR, what the breaths are. But the first thing they say is, you know, what's the patient's name? And I remember Simon saying, it's Glenn Hoddle. And I remember the man saying, bloody hell.
I never want to experience it again. I really don't. Well, I remember leaving the show because we cancelled the show that afternoon. And I remember getting back on the train, and it was like, it was that kind of numbness, and I had this numbness in my body. And I think this could have happened 2 months ago when I was in Portugal playing golf with him. And yet it happened in a situation where we had Simon, where we had a defib, you know, and Simon was miraculous.
After the work in the studio, the fantastic air ambulance took you to the Royal London. And then you were transferred to St Bart's Heart Specialist Hospital. You wake up there having no recollection of what's happened.
I can't remember the air ambulance although what a job they do. And obviously it was because of the whack on the head, they took me to the London hospital. And then the x-ray said that I was okay there, then they rushed
That's
me.
quite unbelievable.
Yeah.
The force your head hit the ground with no control
Well,
is incredible.
Over 3 months later now, as I sit here, if I tap my head just there, it's still quite tender.
Yeah.
So it must have been a hell of a blow, and I think that's why I went there first.
Yeah.
They knew I was having a cardiac arrest, but I think they thought possibly that was the major problem, and then it was Russia. And the only other thing I remember, my son Jamie lives in London, so he was the first to get to the London hospital, and I remember just squeezing his hand and seeing him in the ambulance going from there to St Bart's, and then obviously there it was emergency. I can't remember any of that, and thankfully the doctors put the stents in to just keep me going really until they found out, you know, that I needed the well, it was quadruple bypass in the end, but that's quite big. When you're in hospital and you're on medication, I wasn't taking everything in that was coming in. I'd take it in and then forget. But when they said that, you know, that it was quadruple, I realised I was a lucky man, so lucky, not just because of the synchronisation of the timing like we spoke about on the day, but, you know, there was something going on for quite some time. And, you know, that could have happened any time, and they could have had a massive stroke. He went through it all with me. And, again, that hit me big time afterwards. It could have been any time.
Could have been bed sleeping.
Yeah, it could
golf
have been
course.
with my grandchildren. I could have been wherever. So I'm so thankful again that I was in the right place at the right time. And the hospital at St Bart's, I got to say, was they were quite incredible.
Former England, Chelsea and Tottenham manager and player Glenn Hoddle is seriously ill in hospital tonight.
Glenn was transferred to a hospital in London and his condition is described as serious.
Whatever Glenn Hoddle is to you, whether it's one of the greatest footballers the country's ever produced, a wonderful colleague, a much-loved family member, the outpouring of love and support today has been quite something to behold.
Glenn, we are right behind you in your recovery.
He's somebody that I admire greatly. He's just such a nice guy with a huge passion and love for football.
Over the years, I said, it's funny, you become a better player when you're packing, and you become even better when you pass away. People say, make it even more. So I was close to that, obviously, but it's only since probably 2 months down afterwards where my family have sort of told me about the amount of love that was
incredible
sent,
amount of love.
And I can only thank people for their good wishes and their thoughts and their prayers, because it does have an effect. That positivity, I was willing to take that in. That's been a great part of healing for me.
On the Saturday evening, I travelled over to the hospital, and by the time I got there, there was already quite a number of his family there. And I met the family, who are obviously all very grateful and, you know, wanted to ask me lots of questions. And I wanted to speak to one of the doctors just to understand if he had a fighting chance and if I'd done the right thing. And, you know, one of the consultants said to me, you know, you saved his life. You know, you did what was right, you did it quickly, and you did it really well.
So you're now 3 months post-operation.
Yeah.
You know, how is the recovery going?
It's gone really well. I walk every day, about 1.5 miles every day, sometimes 2 miles. Used to hate walking before because of my bad knee and my back.
You didn't run much on the football pitch. You had the ball.
But unless I was chasing that little white ball playing golf, I could walk then 6 miles. But I used to hate walking, you know. Now, you know, because I've got to do it, keep the heart and lungs going, it's been a real joy. And the family have been unbelievable. They're the ones that went through all the trauma. Like you guys in the studio went through the trauma more than me. They're the ones that it's really hit, and I think it will take them a longer time than perhaps myself. One of the things that have got me through all this is the sense of humour. If that was my last seconds of my life, what a way to go.
What, losing to be a tech ball?
It's playing football.
Yeah.
Playing football. God, dear, you know, that's just hit me now, actually. If that was my last seconds on earth, which I was very close to,
would have been kicking a ball.
Without Simon Daniels, it was playing football.
So I saw Glenn a couple of weeks ago. I went to his house. When I went in the front door, he gave me a big hug, and I gave him a big hug. perhaps shouldn't have squeezed him quite that hard because he was still a little bit sore. And he said, "Don't forget you broke 7 of my ribs." And we had a good laugh about that. I don't think, you know, in that situation, whether it was me or someone else, I don't think we could have done anything better. It wasn't just me. There was lots of other people involved, whether it's getting the defibrillator, phoning the ambulance, making sure that, you know, the paramedics could get into the studio. We all played a part that day. And I was just confident that I'd done the best I could do, and we just had to, you know, pray that he pulled through, and he's looking great.
Well, Simon, and for the team to save your life is just, you know, it's just so humbling. It's changed my perspective on life. I'm sure it's changed yours.
Yeah, I mean, what's come out of this is, you know what? If I had passed away then, what I'd done career-wise, or what we all do career-wise or materially, means nothing. It's actually how you do it. If you're a great businessman, or you're a politician or a sportsman or whatever, if you've trodden on everyone to get there, if you've, you know, done terrible things to get there, that's your life. That's what you're gonna be judged on. It's how you do things, which is far more important than what you achieve.
It showed me how precious life is. Yeah. To see a friend, a colleague, you know, a legend of the game, 2 minutes earlier on his birthday, full of life, loving what he's doing, to all of a sudden, you know, minutes, you know, from possible death is a picture that, you know, I'll never forget, but the reward is the picture I've got now in front of me, you sitting here, you know, looking amazing.
In my lifetime, I hope I don't have to go through that again, but going through that experience, I kind of know what I should be doing.
It can happen to anyone, you know, and it just puts it to me, you know, you go home, you cuddle your children, you know, my kids are quite old, but my daughter's 17, you know, and when I got home, the first thing I did was give her a cuddle, because you just don't know. For me, more than anything, it gave me a different outlook in life. You know, when I'm moaning about the tea don't taste right, or Claire's burnt the dinner or something, you know, it stops you thinking, what am I moaning for? I've just witnessed the most horrific thing that I've ever experienced in my life.
I would encourage anybody, go out, do a course in CPR. It's a fantastic skill to have, and you don't know when you're going to need it. It might be your neighbour, it might be a family relative, you might be at work like we had here. None of us that day thought that anyone would be taken ill, and, you know, it just happened to be Glenn, and I was able to do something that has saved his life.
So your recovery now, you're doing exceptionally well. When are we going to see you back? When are you going to be back?
I'm hoping, you know, in the near future. I think within the next 3 weeks.
You're not going for the London Derby, North London Derby. Don't tell me it's a North London Derby.
I think that might be one that we might have our eye on. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
But no, I'm talking to the guys, obviously. Hopefully we'll be back a little bit, maybe even before that one. So I think I need to just sort of feed my way in. But the North London Derby would be a nice way to come back if the guys want me for that game.
It certainly would, and listen, man, I'm so glad you're here, mate, honestly.
Great, mate. Good to see you. God bless you.